doctor," yelled one of the SS men. I stepped forward. He stood me on a table, and I was given the first order of my camp life. "Tell these animals to keep quiet, or I'll have them all shot." "Listen to me," I called to them. "Do not be afraid. This is only a disinfection center. Nothing will happen to you here. Afterwards, we'll be put to work and we'll all remain together. Friends, sisters in our common fate. I am your doctor. I'll stay with you always, to take care of you, to protect you. Please calm down." My words had their effect. The women believed me. They fell silent and entered the building, one after another. Under the supervision of SS men and women, other prisoners carried out the program of disinfection. We were undressed there before the laughing SS guards, who showed their appreciation for some of the beautiful bodies by slashing them with whips. Everything that could have reminded us of our past life was taken away from us. When we came out of the building, we did not know each other anymore. Instead of the exhausted, tortured, but still self-respecting women who had entered through its door, we were a heart-rending lot of crying clowns, a ghastly carnival procession marching towards the last festival, death. I was beyond caring. After my encouraging speech to the hysterical women, I had swallowed the 40 centigrams of morphine which I had hidden in a small bottle. I felt an ironical superiority as I held my head to the scissors and smiled under the ice-cold shower. My feet were winged by the effects of the morphine as I entered the doors of Auschwitz, certain that I was going towards the supreme happiness of oblivion. The poor young women who were brought to Auschwitz from the various ghettos of Hungary did not know that they would have to pay with their lives and the lives of their unborn children for that last tender night spent in the arms of their husbands. A few days after the arrival of the new transport, one of the SS chiefs would address the women, encouraging the pregnant ones to step forward, because they would be taken to another camp where living conditions would be better. He also promised them double bread rations so as to be strong and healthy when the hour of delivery came. Group after group of pregnant women left Camp C. Even I was naive enough at that time to believe the Germans, until one day I happened to have an errand near the crematories and saw with my own eyes what was done to these women. They were surrounded by a group of SS men and women who amused themselves by giving these helpless creatures a taste of hell, after which death was a welcome friend. They were beaten with clubs and whips, torn by dogs, dragged around by the hair, and kicked in the stomach with heavy German boots. Then, when they collapsed, they were thrown into the crematory alive. I stood rooted to the ground, unable to move, to scream, to run away. But gradually, the horror turned into revolt, and this revolt shook me out of my lethargy and gave me a new incentive to live. I had to remain alive. It was up to me to save the life of the mothers, if there was no other way than by destroying the life of their unborn children. I ran back to camp and, going from block to block, told the women what I had seen. Never again was anyone to betray their condition. It was to be denied to our last breath, hidden from the SS guards and even the Blokhova, on whose goodwill our life depended. On dark nights, when everyone else was sleeping, in dark corners of the camp, in the toilet, on the floor, without a drop of water, I delivered their babies. First, I took the 9-month pregnancies. I accelerated the birth by the rupture of membranes, and usually within 1 or 2 days, spontaneous births took place without further intervention. Or I produced dilation with my fingers, inverted the embryo, and thus brought it to life. In the dark, always hurried, in the midst of the filth and dirt. After the child had been delivered, I quickly bandaged the mother's abdomen and sent her back to work. When possible, I placed her in my hospital, which was in reality a grim joke. She usually went with the diagnosis of pneumonia, which was a safe diagnosis, not one that would have her sent to the crematory. I delivered women in the 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th month, always in a hurry, always with 5 fingers, in the dark, under terrible conditions. No one will ever know what it meant to me to destroy these babies. After years and years of medical practice, childbirth was still to me the most beautiful, the greatest miracle of nature. I loved those newborn babies, not as a doctor, but as a mother, and it was again and again my own child whom I killed to save the life of a woman. Every time, kneeling down in the mud, dirt, and excrement which covered the floor of the barracks to perform a delivery, without instruments, without water, without the most elementary requirements of hygiene, I prayed to God to help me save the mother, or I would never again touch a pregnant woman. And if I had not done it, Both mother and child would have been cruelly murdered. By a miracle, which to every doctor must sound like a fairy tale, every one of these women recovered and was able to work, which, at least for a while, saved her life. One day, Dr. Mengele came to the hospital and gave a new order. From now on, Jewish women could have their children. They were not going to be killed because of their pregnancy. The children, of course, had to be taken to the crematory by me personally, but the women would be allowed to live. I was jubilant. Women who delivered in our so-called hospital on its clean floor, with the help of a few primitive instruments that had been given to me, had a better chance to come out of this death camp, not only alive, but in a condition to have other children later. I had 292 expectant mothers in my ward when Dr. Mengele changed his mind. He came roaring into the hospital, whip and revolver in hand, and had all the 292 women loaded on a single truck and tossed alive into the flames of the crematory. Irma Gries was sentenced by the British to be hanged by the neck until dead. The sentence was executed, but this act of justice, real justice, would have called for her dying again and again for every life she had destroyed, or her being tortured and mutilated for every victim she had tortured and mutilated. Will not bring back the dead, and neither will it restore to life those whom she had driven to insanity and maimed for life. She was one of the most beautiful women I have ever seen. Her body was perfect in every line, her face clear and angelic, and her blue eyes the gayest, the most innocent eyes one can imagine. And yet, Irma Gries was the most depraved, cruel, imaginative sexual pervert I ever came across. She was the highest-ranking SS woman in Auschwitz, and it was my bad luck to be under her eyes during my entire camp life. One day, she ordered me to report to her in the afternoon at the so-called maternity ward of our hospital. "I have watched you operate," she said, "and I have perfect confidence in you as a doctor. I want you to examine me. I think I may be pregnant." I knew that it was against the rules for a prisoner to touch a guard, and breaking that rule was punishable by death. At the same time, refusing an order was punishable by death too. She lay down on the bench, and I proceeded with the examination. She was indeed pregnant. "Be here tomorrow afternoon," she ordered. "You are going to perform an abortion on me." "But I have absolutely no instruments," I replied, "and if someone finds out, that will mean death for me." "No arguments, leave everything to me." Next afternoon, at the appointed hour, I was ready, waiting for her. When she arrived, she brought a case of instruments and her gun. "They are sterilized," she said, handing me the instruments. Then she lay down on the bench and put the gun under her head. I knelt down on the floor and began to operate. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind that this was going to be the last act of my professional career. We were both breaking the rules. Should anyone find out about it, it would mean the end of her career as an SS woman. I would be sent left. We were both equally guilty in the eyes of her superiors, yet she held all the cards. No one besides me needed to know about it. She could easily kill me without even having to make an excuse or to give an explanation. I was sure that this is what she intended to do. While my hands worked almost mechanically, my mind was busy with the thought of death. I had often wondered, while reading about a condemned man's last seconds before death, whether it was true that his whole life unfolds before his eyes in a flash. Yes, it is true. I finished the operation and sat back on my heels, too weary even to get up and face death standing. Suddenly, I remembered the examination at the end of my first year of high school. I had to figure out how old I was by subtracting the date of my birth from the date of the current year. Then, one picture followed after another until I relived, if not every incident, at least the mood and color of my entire life. It had been a happy life, happy, successful, and filled with love and work, which satisfied me completely. I had lost everything, and there was nothing more to live for. Irma Gries got up from the bench, arranged her clothes, picked up her gun, and smiled. I looked up into her smiling face and waited for the bullet which was to put an end to the Gisella Perl I had been before, and to prisoner number 25,404 I was now. But she did not shoot. "You are a good doctor," she said. "What a pity you have to die. Germany needs good doctors." I said nothing.